My name is Andrew Townsend, and I am marketing operations here at Smarty. Today's webinar is about how to unlock value in your address database using metadata, and we're very excited to get started and dive into this content. However, before I introduce our presenter and experts here, let's go over just a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, this webinar will be recorded. We will send a copy of it out to everyone who registered. So if you do need to step out or view this at a later time, you can do so, or forward it on to someone that you think would benefit from this content. All right, so to interact with our presenter and those answering questions and other audience members, in fact, you can use the chat and the Q&A features inside of the Zoom webinar interface. We've got people in the wings, Adam Charlton, who's one of our developers and experts in the wings, and he'll be ready to take your questions. And of course, we'll bring some of your questions up to our presenter during the Q&A throughout and at the end. So speaking of our presenter, today we have John Hickey, Product Marketing Manager with us, and we're very excited to hear what you've got to share with us. So without further ado, John Hickey. And I muted you, so immediately we can't hear you. Sorry.
How about now?
There we go. Sounds great.
Okay. Well, thanks, Andrew, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining the presentation today. We're going to start out with a little quiz. What does a house wear? Go ahead and enter what you think a house wears into the chat. What does a house wear? Anything popping up, Andrew?
I think people are still trying to figure out if it's a riddle or if there's a question.
Okay, so what does a house wear? A house wears a dress, of course. So I'm really sorry about that. That was like the best joke on addresses I could find on the internet. But is it possible to make a discussion about address metadata interesting, engaging? I don't know, but maybe we can do some things to help. We will do a live address lookup during the presentation. If you are interested in having your address used as the example in the demonstration, please put that in the chat now. That can be your home address, your business address, or some other address.
Your childhood home, your dog's birthplace, and address is what we're looking for.
Any address, yeah. Also, as Andrew mentioned, feel free to put your questions in the chat during the presentation. And finally, help us ideate. So I'll be sharing some ideas and use cases on why address metadata is important. And if you can think of another way to utilize that metadata, please share with everybody in the chat. So today's objective, I hope to share with you how there's gold in them thar address metadators. And we're going to try to do that first with a Smarty intro to give you some context as to where we're coming from. Then we'll briefly define what address metadata is, and we'll spend the bulk of the time defining metadata that you can get with an address, as well as their use cases and why it's important. And finally, we'll show you how to get address metadata. So what is Smarty? We're probably best known for address verification, where we take some non-standard address. Maybe it's missing information, it's misspelled, it's not standardized according to the USPS guidelines, and we return a cleaned up standardized address, sort of like what you see here. You know, 6 penny is spelled wrong. We fix that. We add some zip code information. Smarty also does address autocomplete, where as a person is typing their address in a form online on your site, we auto-suggest a verified correct address. And that does two things. First of all, it improves the user experience and makes it easier for them to fill out the form, which translates into higher form conversion rates and increased revenue. But then the other thing it does too is it ensures or it helps prevent bad data from entering your database because they're clicking an address that is complete and verified. We also do geocoding, where we provide latitude and longitude coordinates with addresses so that you can plot those and geospatially analyze. And finally, a new product for us is US Master Address List, where we provide all the deliverable addresses throughout the entire United States, and we can divide those up by states. We'll talk about the significance of that later as well. Okay, so let's get into this presentation on address metadata. What is it? It is simply information about an address. And so you can see here, there, if you counted them up, 45 metadata points here that we provide along with an address. It's important to note that we don't always return all 45. In fact, that would probably be pretty rare, but we return most of them. It's just based on the underlying data and data available about an address, what can be returned. The Smarty address API categorizes metadata into these 4 categories you see on the left, where it is root, components, metadata, and analysis. And we'll talk more about each of those as well. The metadata that we're going to be talking about specifically in this presentation are highlighted with those yellow arrows. So about 9 or 10 out of 45. Down at the bottom is a URL. Andrew, if you don't mind, could you share that URL in the chat? That URL is our US Street API documentation, and it gives a detailed definition of all of these address data points, so you can reference anything we don't cover there. So let's go ahead and start a live lookup. We'll do it 2 ways. First, using our single address verification tool, and then secondly, using showing you how things would work with the US Street Address API. Andrew, any addresses in the chat that we can try?
Yep, we can look at 836 1/2 Smarty Avenue.
All right, hang on. Let me, little difficulty. There we go. Okay. So we are now at the single address verification tool at Smarty, and you can see the URL up here. Andrew, would you mind sharing that in the chat as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so this tool, by the way, it's US and international. Smarty provides address verification throughout the world, all 193 countries and 45, what do you call them, territories. And so you can toggle between US and international. You can toggle between freeform or entering address components. Let's go ahead with freeform. And then, Andrew, can you tell me that address again?
Sure thing. It's 836 1/2.
1/2?
Yep, 1/2 Sartori.
Sartori?
Sartori.
Okay.
Avenue in Torrance.
Is that how you spell Torrance?
Torrance. Yep, that's the one.
Torrance, California, and a zip code?
90501.
Okay, let's see what happens. It found one valid address. So the delivery line 1 was not correctly entered. You can see the difference. I spelled out avenue, and the output came back AVE, an abbreviation according to the USPS. Torrance, California, and you can see it appended the zip forward to the information, provided a latitude, longitude, said the precision of that was rooftop. Okay, so it said it matched the street, city, and state. It confirmed the entire address, and it fixed abbreviations. Below the output there, you'll see a map with the address pinned on the map. And then below that, you're going to see the metadata. So this metadata, it looks like, you can kind of browse through and see the kinds of things that are returned, such as the county name and the county FIPS, the congressional district, the carrier route, additional things and components of the address. And we'll cover this in just a minute. But I just wanted to demonstrate, there aren't 45 data points here, but there are probably around 30 to 35. And I think this is pretty normal. Okay, so let's jump over to the API tool. And if you're using our API tool, you might, we'll just show you what happens. Can you tell me again, Andrew, that street, what was it again?
The street was Sartori Avenue, Sartori.
No, with the primary number at the front.
Oh, sorry, 836.5. Sartori.
Sartori, and I'm going to spell it out again, Avenue. And in fact, let's try this experiment. Let's say street, see what happens. And then the city was Torrance, California. Zip code, what was it?
90501.
I'm going to go 90502. Let's see what happens. Up here in the sample request, you can see the data that's been entered. Let's see, right here is Sartori, the street, and you can see the city is Torrance, etc. So let's view API response and see what happens. Okay, so here's the data that comes back with all the metadata as well, including an input index that we'll talk about later. There's delivery line 1, there's the last line of the address, and let's see, the primary number is 836.5, the street name. It did correct, I entered street, but it said the correct street suffix is avenue. And then I entered 90502 and it corrected the zip code to be 90501, added the +4. And here's metadata that we're going to cover in the rest of the presentation. So that's what the output, you send this information through the API to us, we return this information down here. Okay, let's jump back into the presentation. Okay, so the root category of metadata, one thing in there is the input API. Just get, there we go. Which is your identifier to reference the input and output of addresses. It's a number that you create and can send along with the address lookups. Oops. The use case for this is linking the same address in your batch before and after verification. If you forget to do that, we provide you with an input index, which shows the order in which an address was submitted with others. And the use case is the same. It helps you link things up in case you didn't use the input ID. A best practice, I understand from Adam actually, is that using the input ID as opposed to relying on input index. Another thing that we provide you is the delivery point barcode. And this is, if you see in this graphic here, made up of the zip code, the +4, the delivery point digits, which is usually the last 2 digits of your primary number and your address. And then there's a check digit here as well, and we can tell you how to calculate that later at the end of Q&A if you'd like. But the use cases for the delivery point barcode is to generate something called the IMB, which is the Intelligent Mail Barcode, which enables postage discounts. So the IMB uses the delivery point barcode as part of a longer barcode. And when you print that barcode on your mail, you get a mail discount. Another use case is to generate your own unique identifier from the delivery point barcode, and some people do that. All right, other things that we return to you when we verify an address as metadata are the components of the address. We break down all the components, we parse them into individual fields, and that enables standardizing and normalizing addresses. So for example, the predirection here in the first row, E, someone might spell that out as east, but the USPS standards would say that they want that abbreviated. And so we know that, and we change the east to an E. Same with road or avenue and apartment. If you said suite and it was apartment, we would fix that to be apartment. So we can standardize and normalize those things. And because of that, it allows us to fix and verify addresses, which when you're sending to verified addresses, you can reduce, wasted postage. It allows you also to dedupe and merge records. Say somebody entered on your website their address one way, and then the next time they entered it another way. You wouldn't be able to dedupe those because they're different. But after we go through standardizing these addresses, then you'll have matches. You'll find duplicates by address, and you can dedupe or merge those records, which help you merge databases. This also helps with compatibility with legacy systems. And really all of, this is about clean data, getting you clean data and data hygiene. All right, under the metadata category for metadata, address metadata is something called the record type. And record types are a single letter that indicate things like this address is a high-rise or a multi-unit building, or this is a rural address, or this address falls on a street, or it's a post office box, or G, it's a general delivery. And general delivery is where somebody picks up their mail at the post office. Maybe they don't have a permanent address, like people touring the country in RVs. The use cases for record type include customer knowledge, segmenting and targeting. And so in the chat, go ahead and list what sort of products you might want to market to a high rise as opposed to a rural location or some other use case. And while you're doing that, let me cover the other use case, which is fraud prevention. So that general delivery option where you go pick up mail at a local post office is often used by scammers as a way to get multiple free trials and conduct other shenanigans. So Andrew, any thoughts come through the chat on what you might market to a high-rise area as opposed to a rural? Or do you have any ideas?
I'm not getting any in the chat. I think everybody was so shocked by the scammers thing. If you guys want to jump in, I can think of a couple. So there's maybe like a noise machine, a white noise machine. You're more likely to need that in the city for your 300 neighbors than you would out in a rural area. Mm-hmm. Man, I'm having a hard time thinking of them.
Well, I'm thinking of like one of those more industrialized lawnmowers with the 3 blades,
Oh, that's true. You definitely need that on a high rise. Just kidding.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Metadata. Also, we return something called the RDI, which is Residential Delivery Indicator, which, as you might guess, indicates whether the address is residential or commercial. And if a blank value was returned, that means we don't have enough information about the address, and that usually means that it was a bad address. The use cases for this is very similar to the previous slide, segmenting mailings and services. And so can anybody think of something you might market to a residential versus a commercial property and vice versa? Any thoughts by you?
Well, your industrial lawnmower comes up again.
Yeah.
Let's see, well, no, I was going to say some industrial strength stuff, but I have a lot of industrial strength stuff at my house.
Yeah, that's funny. I was thinking the same thing, like industrial cleaners, but maybe I have some of that as well.
Right. We found, actually, side note, during COVID, we found that some of the industrial strength cleaners were damaging our toilet seats. And so we just replaced our toilet seats because of the bleach damage that we're getting.
Oh my gosh, that's so
gotta be careful with that stuff.
My toilet seat's peeling as well. And I wonder if it's because of what we're using. Probably is. Yeah. I'll ask my wife. Anyway, another use case is market analysis. With the geocodes we provide you, you'll be able to plot that on a map and see all the residential and commercial properties and how they're intermixed with each other or divided. So you can also use that to see, if one area is outperforming another, is it related to a residential commercial mix? You can try to answer that question. It's also good for decision making, like where do we put our next store, office, or apartment complex? You can see, the mix of residential, commercial on a map. And also, if you're doing e-commerce, it's important for shipping cost calculation. I believe FedEx charges $4 more for a residential delivery than they do a commercial. And so if you're getting hit with that cost and not passing it on to your customer, that could be a problem for your profitability. Another metadata, well, we talked about this. We provide you with the latitude and longitude. The address verification service we offer provides geocodes, but there's ZIP9, also known as Street Segment Center. So if you look at this diagram, you can see some street segments here, and you can see a pin in the center of those. So what would happen, say you have somebody living in this house here, you would see a pin in the center of the street. But let's say you had a second customer and they lived in the corner house down here, you would see 2 pins here. If you need more geocode accuracy than that, if you want true rooftop geocoding, that's available in our geocoding product. Use cases for this is visualizations and spatial analysis. It helps tremendously with decision-making, strategy, and marketing. For example, location expansion, like we mentioned before, but school districts use this to plan their bus routes. If you add our master address list with all the possible addresses out there, you can do something called saturation analysis, where you overlay your address file on a map listing all the addresses, and you can easily see how penetrated or unpenetrated an area is. This is often used by market analysts who do consulting, as well as linear asset companies like a fiber optics company, who need to decide where they're going to lay down their fiber optic lines, which costs them a lot of money to do that. And so they get a better ROI by doing this kind of analysis. Okay, we also, in the analysis category of metadata, we provide you something called vacant, which is exactly what you would guess. It tells whether a property is vacant or occupied. And the use case here, of course, would be, making business decisions. Where do we expand? Yeah, there are a lot of addresses in this one area, but are they even occupied? So another thing would be making sales territories that could influence, how vacant an area is, could influence that. You also learn something about your customers living in highly vacant or very low vacant areas. And by not sending your mail to a vacant address, you of course save the mail costs. You also save delivery costs if you're a service organization, say a healthcare organization going out to serve an elderly person whose address is vacant. There may be some fraud involved in that, and you can save the time of sending somebody out. And then again, fraud prevention. For example, scammers love to pick up their mail at a vacant address because they know nobody else. They're competing with nobody else to get that mail. Okay, last 2 data points we're going to talk about. Can you read the full title, Andrew, or is my...
I see analysis footnotes versus DPV footnotes.
All right, thanks. So there's a difference between these 2 footnotes that we provide you. Footnotes by itself just tells you what we did to obtain a match, what we did to an address. Whereas DPV footnotes, where DPV stands for delivery point validation, it tells you how good of a match we ended up with. So quick examples here. The footnotes, what was fixed, if we returned an N pound, that fixed abbreviations, for example, changing street to ST or boulevard to avenue. If we return an A pound, that corrected a zip code. If we returned a J pound, that it means 2 addresses were submitted, like a street and a PO box. And there's many more of these codes, and important to note that this field could contain more than 1 code. Okay, so the use case for this is mostly for analysis, like determining your threshold for what you'll accept before mailing. But also you could use it to train people who capture your customer data. If you're seeing one person often entering something that entering addresses in a way that continue to be fixed, you can do some training. DPV footnotes. These are a series of 2-letter number combination codes combined. And despite what you thought about the letter A or the number 1, those are bad when combined. If you see an A1, it means your address was completely not validated. There was nothing in that address we validated. If you see an AABB, this is good. Your address was fully validated, and AACC, the root address validated, but there's an unknown secondary address. And again, these are just a sample of all the codes that we could send you. Well, the use case for that is mailing decisions and savings, kind of similar to the things that we've talked about before. And now we're at the end of the presentation. The summary benefits: number 1, you can understand address errors and determine mailing thresholds, which allow you to also reach more customers effectively and reduce wasted mail costs. You can learn more about an audience and create better marketing campaigns, improve analysis with powerful geospatial visualizations, reduce fraud, make better business decisions, and this leads to boosting revenues and increasing profits. So wow, all of those benefits from just looking at 10 metadata points, and remember, we return as many as 45. So if you are a Smarty customer, you already receive metadata when you're doing address validation. And I hope from this presentation, you got some ideas on how you can leverage that information to improve your business. If you are not a Smarty customer, you can get metadata through our single address lookup tool, the one we used for a demo at first. The limitation there, of course, is you're entering one address at a time, but you can use that unlimited. If you don't like doing one at a time, you can do batch address lookup. Go to smarty.com/sign up. You'll sign up for a free account. And once you've done that, you will see an option to get a free trial for 30 days. And that free trial actually includes 1,000 lookups. But after your free trial is open, you'll have 250 lookups a month you can do for free thereafter. And if that's not enough, then we encourage you to go to smarty.com/pricing and check out our API pricing plans that start as low as around $50. And you can use that to clean up your existing database and to keep it clean moving forward. With that, that's all I have for today. And we have some time now for question and answer.
That's excellent. So a couple of the questions that are coming up involve the frequency of updating our data. How often do we update all of our address data? How often do we update the vacant flag? How often do we update, mail routes and things like that? I don't know if you know that, John, or maybe we should ask Adam.
I will tell you what I think. Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong. We update once a month for US, and I believe international is once a quarter. Adam, does that sound right?
That is correct. Yeah. So one of the important things, though, with a lot of these metadata fields is that we receive these metadata fields from the USPS. And so the USPS, like the vacant field in particular, if an address doesn't receive mail for 90 days, they flag it as vacant. So we take that address metadata and we update our service with it every single month.
Fantastic. One other question here. It says that there's $250 a month for free. Is that indefinite?
I believe it is. What I don't know is if they have to indicate once a month that they still want it. Do Andrew, you or Adam know?
I believe so. The first time you sign up for it, you get 1,000 for that first month. Then you have to manually go in and say, I would like to renew for 250 free for another month. And then when you log into your account the next month, you do the same thing. So it is indefinite, but you do need to go in and click renew each month. Or just buy a really cheap plan for like $7 and do way more.
Yeah,
and don't have to manually renew.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. So we have these points of metadata, and you went over a lot of it. Are there additional metadata points like demographics or census data that come with this address, or do we only deal with the address data? Do we have the people data or just the address data?
I will defer that one to Adam, our expert.
So at the moment, in our current version of the product, we only offer metadata on the addresses themselves. Demographic and other such like census style data, we currently don't offer.
Other than vacancies, which I think are still pretty valuable.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, that's all the questions that we have now, and we're ending right on time. So again, if you would like to use the single address lookup, you can do so for free. If you want to use batch address lookups, you can do that for free. And if you want to get our API so that all of your forms are automatically filling and automatically validating, or maybe your internal tools need to have that kind of data for fat thumbing is what we call it when you're trying to type it and you mistype something. You can set that up with the API, and it's very fast and very easy. Thank you, John, and thank you, Adam, for your time and for your knowledge and for sharing this. We will get this emailed out to everybody for you to review at a later time. Hopefully we'll get that out later today, and we hope you guys all have a great day. Have a good one.